Okay, hey Kenny, how's it going?
Great, AJ. Thanks for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
Your book is fascinating for me because I'm in it for a little bit, and I was there when you did this whole experiment of living semi-homeless or homeless while you were still working a professional job. So I think the title says it all: young homeless professional. Why what made you decide, or where did the idea come from to live as a homeless person but still having a professional job?
Okay. Well, when I did the experiment, I was living in Georgia, but the idea actually came to me a couple of years before that when I was living and working in California. And originally, I'd been working in California as like a nature guide, taking kids hiking and teaching them about nature. And then I got a job at a public school that was down in the city. And so every day I would drive from my house up in the national forest down to the city and work. Then I would drive back home to the national forest, and I thought, why am I doing this drive so long? And I'm just living up here. Why don't I just live in the woods? I don't really need to have a house. I can just kind of camp out permanently. And that's kind of how the idea happened, doing that commute, because it was like a 45-minute commute from the national forest and the mountains down into the city out near Los Angeles. And, going from the national forest to the city was like a transition from something I loved, nature, out to sort of a big smoggy city. And just the idea of camping out while I was working. Why don't I just drive to the national forest every night, camp out, get up in the morning, drive to work? So that's kind of how it evolved.
Nice, but you didn't actually do it at that time, right? It was just you got the idea for it, right?
Right, I got the idea during those long drives, commuting in the car, you think about a lot of things. And
Mm.
I didn't really do it then. I just started thinking about it. And then when I moved back home to Georgia, that's when I did that, when I did the homeless experiment.
Ah, right. And so, how did that start? How did it start off?
Well, once again, I was teaching at a nature center, so I wasn't really at a public school anymore. And the nature center had a lot of forest property, and around Athens, Georgia, there was a lot of sort of just pastures and forests and creeks and streams. And again, I was working during the day, teaching kids about nature and renting a house. And then I suddenly thought, hey, why am I paying rent? Why don't I just try to live in the forest for a while and see if it works? So that's kind of how it came about once I got to Georgia.
Cool. And so then, what did you do? Can you describe like how did you live, and did your bosses know? What was it
Yeah,
like in the very beginning when you first started doing it?
when I first started, I was really nervous, to be honest, because I thought, what if someone catches me and they think I'm a weirdo, or doing something crazy like sleeping on the ground every night, but then in the daytime, taking a shower and shaving and putting on work clothes and going into an office to the nature center. So my bosses didn't know, none of my friends knew, and I kept it secret. I think you were the only one that knew that was in Georgia, aside from Kristen, and then my friend Callan, who was also he was up in Washington D.C. So the only people that knew it were really you and Kristen. And basically, I was nervous and scared at first because I'd never done anything like that, and I was like, well, it's not exactly like breaking the law, but it's kind of weird. People would frown upon it and think I was just bizarre for wanting to sleep outside every day instead of sleeping in the house. Um, but yeah, I would basically drive to some place outside of town, pull out a sleeping pad, and sleep on the ground every night after work. I would kind of go downtown, and sometimes I would meet up with you for coffee or something, and we would chat. But then at nighttime, I'd go find a place in the forest to sleep.
And you mentioned showering. How did you shower? How did you manage to do that without while you're camping out?
Well, that was the cool thing. The place where I worked, we had a shower and a toilet for volunteers. So I would basically sneak in and shower every morning before work, before anyone got there. So I would kind of
And
sneak in early, make coffee, take a shower before anyone came in, and then I'd pretend like I just got to work.
did anyone at your work ever suspect what was going on? Did they ever figure it out?
Well, I don't think so, but later, a couple of years later, I was talking to my friends Andrew and Anna that also are mentioned in the book, and they said they kind of had an idea, but they didn't really know, and no one ever really confronted me on it or asked me about it, so it was kind of don't ask, don't tell.
Ah, interesting. Yeah. What was it like? I mean, did you enjoy it? What was your feeling about it? You mentioned you were nervous in the beginning, but once you got into it, how did you feel about it?
Yeah, once I got into it and got over some of the fears of like, waking up to someone standing over me or someone discovering me sleeping in the forest, I never was really afraid of wild animals or anything, so I didn't have that fear, but more afraid of the people. finding me. Once I got over that, it was fun. It was really nice to wake up at daylight with the sun creeping through the forest, and then to sometimes wake up in the morning and jump in a lake or a creek, and then every night kind of lay down and listen to the sounds of nature, like the birds or the crickets or the frogs or whatever at night. So I really enjoyed it. I think overall, I felt a big sense of freedom. That's what I felt mostly. Like I can sleep anywhere, I can do anything, I can go anywhere, I'm free.
Nice. Very interesting. Yeah. And what's interesting is you and I were doing the same kind of experiment at the same time. I guess you mentioned in your book that I was living in my
Yeah,
car at the time.
yeah, and I mean, whether I don't know if you knew it, but you were kind of an inspiration as well because you were doing it and you had a dog and you had a car and we would meet up and you would tell me about your adventures and I would tell you about mine and that kind of kept me going sometimes when you don't know if you're doing the right thing or you're a bit nervous about what you're doing, but you get that inspiration. So it was cool to have you doing it the same time, a slightly different way, but we just kind of proved to ourselves, we could do it.
Yeah, I agree. Of course, it was the same for me. It was so great that we could get together and have coffee in Athens or something, and we both had this kind of secret that we're both living kind of homeless. I was living in my car. You're camping in the woods, and but it was so
Yeah,
cool because you were also an inspiration for me. I just thought, oh, this is so great, and I thought it was cool because I wasn't working at the time, but I thought the fact that you were managing to keep a job going at the same time was really interesting.
yeah, that was the twist, the little twisty part that to the plot was kind of, could I maintain a professional appearance? Could I keep a daily routine? Could I live, a quote normal life, but still be doing this experiment of living outside and sleeping on the ground, sleeping homeless every night? That was kind of the cool part, like keeping the job going.
Did you sleep well then?
At first I didn't, but what I learned was, you don't need a whole lot. I basically had a sleeping pad, and for the first week or so, it was pretty uncomfortable. But then you just kind of adapt to it and you adjust to it. Like you don't need a big king size, comfortable, cushy mattress. It's nice to have that, but you can get by on less if you need to. And that was the cool thing, was learning that I needed less and didn't have to have all those things. But yeah, I I would say at first it wasn't that comfortable, but I got used to it, and it just became regular and normal and routine. So I slept all right after that.
Yeah, and you mentioned too that you'd left an apartment, so you weren't paying rent anymore. So did it impact your finances? I mean, was that part of the freedom?
Yeah, that was part of the freedom. Was I can't remember how much I was paying back then, but several $100s a month I was saving, and at the time I didn't quite know it. I had an idea, but it led to me leaving the States and going to Southeast Asia. So saving some money definitely helped for that part. The next part of the adventure was leaving the States and going to live overseas, and it wasn't like the main factor, but it definitely helped to be able to save say $500 a month extra from rent.
Yeah, and I imagine that overall that it had an impact. I mean, obviously you're not living homeless now, but when you look back, I mean, what do you think you learned from it, or in what ways did it impact you?
Well, it definitely gave me a bigger, broader perspective of how the rest of the world lives. Because now that I live in Southeast Asia, I travel to Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, and see a lot of people that live on a whole lot less than we did or we do in the States, and they're pretty comfortable in lots of cases. Like a lot of the folks I see that live near me now in Indonesia, they sleep on basically a straw mattress on the ground, a straw mat that's not even an inch thick. So they're kind of doing it every day. That's their whole life, and it gave me that sense of appreciating. Well, they're doing it. That's their whole life, and I can do it too. And just to be able to relate to it on a different level and say, "Yep, I can do that. I've done it before," and to really appreciate how a lot of the rest of the world lives. Um, I think that was a big eye opener for me, a big life learning lesson.
One of the things that I learned, and that I hear what you're saying as well, is that I think in America, if a quote normal person hears about, say, an Indonesian person and they sleep on a straw mat on the floor, they think, oh, it's so sad, it's such a hardship. But actually, when you do it like what you did, oh well, it's not a hardship. You adjust to it, and these people aren't poor victims. They're perfectly happy.
Yeah, exactly. I now live in a village, and one of my neighbors, he sleeps outside under a little shed pretty much every night, and he's got a straw mat. That's all he's got. and he's a nice enough guy. He seems relatively happy. He's got a job, so he's kind of he lives the young homeless professional. It's not just an experiment. But he comes over and he hangs out at our house and he does some like handiwork, some maintenance, and we give him some money. And he's a nice guy. And overall, I would say he's pretty happy. He's not depressed. He sleeps outside under a shed on a mat, and he's a decent guy. He sleeps in our village and helps out around the places when we need to do some work and that sort of thing. So I guess the whole point there is just broadening your perspective and seeing that there's different ways to live and different lifestyles, and kind of escaping your own sort of bias, and seeing how they can live and how they do live.
Yeah, right. You decided obviously to write a book about this. Why did you decide to write a book about this whole experience?
Well, I kept a journal the whole time, and I just thought I wanted to share this story. Number one, to maybe inspire other people, like especially students, because I'm a teacher and I work with students, middle school, high school, and even teach a lot of teachers, do teacher workshops. And I thought, if I can share this story, maybe it will broaden their perspective. Maybe it will widen their worldview. And I think one of my big messages, aside from the social message of broadening your worldview and seeing how the world is kind of connecting with nature and being able to sleep outdoors and being comfortable outdoors. So yeah, I just want to share those messages with people and say, yeah, we need to connect with the earth, connect with other people, connect with community, get out and travel around and see how things are.
Yeah, definitely. That's great. And obviously you're not homeless now, so what are you doing now?
Now I'm in Indonesia, and I kind of do something related to what I've always done, which is I still am a teacher, but I now teach kids outdoors. So I like to call them expeditions or adventure, learning trips. But basically, I take school groups all around Southeast Asia to go kayaking, to go hiking, to go camping, to go fishing. I even take them on, village tours or local markets, or even teach things like cooking, how to cook local food. So basically, real experiential learning, getting outdoors, seeing the world, but still learning, some science, biology, some cultural sensitivity, and that sort of thing. So I really love the job now. It's great.
That's fantastic. Where can people get in touch with you if they wanted to hire you to come to their school or lead a trip or consult with you?
Yeah, the best way is my website or my email. So my website is theearthmatters.asia. So they can just look up Kenny Peavy or look up Earth Matters, and that will pop up usually in Google, or go directly to my website, theearthmatters.asia, or email me. It's earthmattersinfo@gmail.com.
Fantastic. Great. And the name of the book is Young Homeless Professional by Kenny Peavy. Kenny, so great to catch up with you. Thanks.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, AJ. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, sure. And I look forward to, we're going to meet up again in Southeast Asia at the end of this year.
I hope so. It'd be great to see you.
All right, great. Thanks, Kenny.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.